You're watching or listening to Strangers in Skaro. And for this edition, we are going to be talking about the latest news and rumours and speculation, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
I'm Ian.
Hi, I'm John.
I'm Mark.
Hi, I'm Matt.
Steve. Oh, he's
is it
frozen out.
literally- I didn't-
No, he's
no, I
not.
hadn't frozen. Sorry,
No,
I thought no, you're
He's
right.
just slightly older
Steve,
than everybody else.
Do you want a cup of tea?
Despite the
Matt-
advancing years, I'm still Steve.
And I'm also Steve. And
And for the benefit of this conversation, and we've sort of pre-organised this, so it's not just me being rude, but I'm going to call you Schapansky. And I'm
Right.
going to call the other Steve Shat, so that we can
Right,
distinguish
no, I'm
between...
off. I'm off. No, I'm not having that. I'm not having that. That's right out.
Okay, there is this week there's been another leak on Reddit, which I'm not entirely sure whether this is from this Andrew guy or not, who seems to get everything right. I think it is, but I've not actually seen that confirmed. However, there's interesting stuff in there, and that interesting stuff that's in there kind of corroborates other interesting things that we've heard. But in other cases, it kind of goes against the interesting things that we've also heard and believe. So we're going to just kind of go through this and have a conversation about the future of Doctor Who in the sort of immediate term, or immediate to sort of relatively low medium term. Because obviously things are happening at the moment, including what Russell T Davies said in this month's Doctor Who magazine. So we'll get onto that in just a second. Before we go there, I just want to take a couple of minutes because this is essentially supposed to be a roundup conversation. It kind of leaked at the Utopia event last weekend that the Mythmakers looks like the next story to be animated for the Blu-ray range, which will be the first. Oh, Matt. Which will.
Well, the Smugglers is more. Sorry, Karen.
Oh, the Smugglers is more exciting, but also more difficult.
Okay.
But less
I was
fun.
I was going to say this is the first historical to be animated, and I suppose in that respect it sort of acts as a test bed to see if it's worth doing more of the historicals, which I'm assuming it
Reign
will
of
be.
Terror?
But no, the first,
Recent times.
yes, and also sort of fully animated story as opposed to just a couple of episodes. So I don't know. Anybody got any thoughts about the Myth Makers, about whether it's what they would have wanted to see, about whether they think that should lead to more, about what they think it might look like on animation, maybe?
My favourite Hartnell. It's by quite a long distance my favourite Hartnell story. Loved it when they released the audio. Loved the loose cannon reconstruction. Yeah, that's one. This is the first I'm hearing of this tonight, so I'm
Was it?
very excited by that. Well, I don't take notice of what goes on at other people's conventions.
Or even in our WhatsApp thread where it's been brought up either.
Was it mentioned in the WhatsApp? Well, you know, there's so many things in the WhatsApp thread, aren't there?
Okay, moving on. The other thing. Go on, Steve. Go on.
I'm intrigued enough because I'm just doing the mental math in my head, and I think this is the first. I mean, Such a Toymaker obviously was a John Wiles outfit without telesnaps, but it did have an existing episode and a whole bunch of color photographs from like the Radio Times and stuff. But like there's no telesnaps for
No.
Mythmakers, obviously no moving footage. So this is pretty much
Tiny
carte
bit,
blanche, do
tiny bit.
whatever you want. Tiny 8mm film stuff for like Stephen getting up behind a rock or something like that, and
Vicky's
Vicky walking
departure.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this gives them, I think, pretty clear leave to make the I'm sure David J. Howe won't be like pounding down the door. Do you need the model of the Trojan horse for this? I think no, we can animate one of our own this time. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
I'm sure that Trojan horse is quite iconic, isn't it? So I'm sure
It
they'll
is.
stick with the design for that. But yeah, you're right. Outside of that.
they've now got the AI reconstructions to take their lead from, so they can really riff off those.
And they are just as they were on the telly.
Yep,
Yep.
Just as they
almost
were.
exact, uncanny.
Yeah.
Okay, I am moving on. Stephen, you've talked about this. Schapansky, Stephen, you've talked
Thank
about
you.
this on Radio Free Skaro, of course, but we've yet to mention it on here. The announcement about the CBeebies, the animation for looking for a potential new partner. Which seems like a slightly odd move for them to go public in that they're looking for a partner, but I suspect what it was a sort of trade announcement that just got reported in the press because it's such interesting news.
I don't know. Well, it was official. I mean, there's an actual BBC pitch document. It was officially announced by the BBC on the website, and only in back channels did I hear that they were talking about it at the Annecy Animation Festival in France last week, or the week of the 13th and 15th, whatever weekend that was. It is interesting that the timing of it, given that the new season just wrapped, and it wasn't Bad Wolf involved in it, but apparently Bad Wolf was at that festival, so they apparently are involved in this somehow, even though they're not mentioned at all in the pitch document. But the fact that they would just reach out, say, anybody want to make some Doctor Who? You've got until July 10th or 15th to decide.
It's weird, isn't it? Because there are so many other companies already making stuff for CBeebies, and any of us, Mark, you for example, definitely will know. You and I have both got kids of approximately the same age, so we'll have seen a lot of the same stuff on CBeebies. It's really good quality stuff, but it's also made by a myriad of different companies, so they could have gone.
You only have to look at something like Bluey, which is just a massive global success. And I think, depending on getting the right partner and the right ideas, it could be an interesting diversion.
Well, something like Bing, for example, which is a terrible program with some hideous characters in it, but beautifully made and beautifully animated. So there are all these companies who can do it, and perhaps that's why Bad Wolf are kind of being shoved to one side, because they don't have a background in this, whereas all these other companies do.
Those Canadians have got a pretty good track record on animation.
Yeah.
Just saying.
From Nelvana back in the 1980s, are you talking about?
You watch a lot of the stuff now that's coming out of Canada.
Matt, sorry?
Is it the Russians that do Skibbity Toilet?
That's could be.
Children's thing I know about.
Russians do Marsha. Russians do Marsha and the Bear, which is well worth catching up with. It's amazing. And it's one of those like the Magic Roundabout that kind of equally good for the grown-ups as it is for the kids. Have you not seen that, Mark?
No.
Oh, really? It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I'll have to check it out.
But this idea of doing an under fives cartoon, it strikes me as it's no different really from the days when we used to get a show aimed primarily at slightly older kids in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and a show aimed at a bit older still perverts with Torchwood. You're aiming at a particular demographic, and why not at that under five demographic? Why not?
Well,
I'm wondering. Sorry, I was just wondering what elements of Doctor Who you can actually transpose to a series for fives and under.
Well, it's easy. A guy and a girl in a box turn up. There's a problem, they solve it and move on.
Each episode would be what, 5-10 minutes?
11
minutes long. Yeah,
11 minutes. That's very specific.
Did they say 11 or Stephen?
Yeah. 52 11-minute episodes over 2 years, starting in 2027. Whether those could maybe be two-parters, they even say in the document.
The interesting thing is that I think they're following the Spidey and His Amazing Friends model, which is the Marvel version, which is on the iPlayer and which has been made for Disney Plus, presumably. Yeah. Those go out in 11-minute episodes in pairs. So you can... and the way children's TV works is it's repeat, because they've got so much airtime to fill, and these animations are expensive. So you have the debut broadcast, and then they just repeat the episodes ad infinitum, but they deliberately make shorter versions. In other words, a 22-minute episode will be split into two 11-minute episodes, so that if they've got a 10-minute slot to fill, they can just bang one of those in there. Whereas if it was just a 20-minute episode, you'd be stuck with that single time slot. So they deliberately make them so that they can be split into different time slots. And so actually 52 episodes is essentially 26 weeks worth of TV, give or take.
It's like when we were kids, the Wooden Tops used to have a birthday 5 or 6 times a year, didn't they? That it was repeat.
Yeah.
When you say we were kids,
they were still repeating it when you were young.
I mean, I remember all sorts of weird things from my childhood that were repeated from before I was born, but the Wooden Tops is not one of them.
It was my favourite, you see. And they did have a lot of birthdays, and they always got the same presents. Poor dears.
Do you know, though, the thing that really strikes me about this pitch document and the announcement and the fact that the BBC want to make Doctor Who for kids is that the BBC are so far from washing their hands of Doctor Who. Doctor Who is an ongoing concern, and they will have grown-up Doctor Who back on our screens as soon as they possibly can, because this is their commitment to it. They're not making a CBeebies version of Doctor Who as a replacement or because the adult series is not of interest anymore. They're making it because they are so interested in Doctor Who. They want all different types of Doctor Who to be going on at the same time. I think it's an incredibly positive move.
They want a gateway drug to the thing. You set it up as them watching it when they were 5 years kids, as most of us did.
Yeah.
And then you have it for them there as an adult so they can move on.
Well, exactly.
Will it be young Doctor Who? Will it be the Time Lord Academy?
It'll be one young Doctor Who. I don't know if it'll be the time. No, I see what you mean. No, I think it's expressly like it's about Doctor Who. There's companions. It's basically Doctor Who, the show, except for kids. Which, I mean, I said this on Radio Free Scarlet this past week, and so sorry for repeating myself. But I like it because I feel like the Disney Who experiment tried to sort of like recapture that 2005 magic and get all the family back in front of the TV again when it's even more fragmented. I don't think it could be saved. I don't think a family audience could be saved in 2025. And so trying to pitch a show that's like, 8-year-olds will watch, or 4-year-olds, but also 28 and 38-year-olds, I think it's done. I think it's over. So to have a show, a Doctor Who show that is expressly for kids, so that maybe the actual show can skew a little older, not puerile, or just throwing in F-bombs and stuff like that, like Torchwood or some of the the newer Star Trek shows, but make it maybe pitched a little more towards the audience that will stick with something like that. I think, as opposed to what current Doctor Who is.
Well, I think Russell T Davies was trying to, in his inimitable way, pitch Doctor Who towards the sort of 13 to 15-year-olds this time around. I mean, they spoke about it explicitly, but I think some of the subjects that they were featuring were sort of aimed explicitly at the sort of 13 to 15-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it being Russell T Davies, he dresses it up in this kind of weird, sort of campy comedy dressing that kind of makes it difficult for any age group to watch it sometimes, frankly.
The big question is, are we now going to do a review a week for 52 weeks of this kids series, when all of those that do have children, they're now aging out of this, and those that don't have children, it's not really good to watch.
We'll be watching it, Matt.
We'll be watching it.
It's a hell of a service to the podcast demographic, isn't it? Let's face it. Look at all the content.
All the other podcasts will be reviewing it too. So maybe we'll do,
more middle-aged men talk about children's television.
It depends how often they broadcast them. Spidey and His Amazing Friends, I think, is weekly, but many of these series go out daily on weekdays. So you'll get something like... So I'm surprised it's 26. I would have thought it would be 25 and 25, because then you can strip it across 5 weeks of 5 days, which is how a lot of these programs go out and how you would organize the repeats. So that sort of 26th episode and the 52nd episode, to me, feel like slightly an odd move. But then again...
Do we know how Ian Levine has reacted to this? That's the important thing.
Nobody can find his telly to find out. Right, let us move on to the headline news, which is this. So this news report, this leak, whatever you want to call it, that turned up on Reddit, that once again goes through the what is happening in Doctor Who at the moment. And I don't know, shall I read the whole thing out quickly? Because it's not
massive.
Go
on.
Yeah.
I've not heard it.
So it says, a leaker active on the Doctor Who leak Discord and on Gallifrey Base, I believe, who has who has been previously accurate about the initial details of the Disney Plus deal in 2022, claims that the BBC is currently in advanced talks with a potential new partner following the collapse of the Disney Plus deal. This new partner is said to be on a similar scale to Disney, and we'll come back to that in a minute. And I listened to your episode this week, Mr. Schapansky, and you seem to arrive at the same place as I did, frankly. But the negotiations are reportedly more complex this time around. According to the source, the new partner is pushing for greater creative control than Disney had following the underwhelming outcome of the Disney deal, with a more hands-on approach, believing that in order for success, the show needs to, quote, take itself more seriously, unquote, and shift its focus towards an older teenage audience, something akin to Stranger Things, based on how Doctor Who initially performed with that demographic on both Disney Plus and the BBC, whereas it didn't do that well in the under 12 demographic. Ian's nodding furiously. This is the bit I think is bullshit.
Wow.
But I mean, no, I think there's more to it than the poster is. See, the thing, so there's a bit more, but I'll put this caveat in now. When people repeat things that they've heard, they always filter it through their own confirmation bias, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think there's quite a bit of
What's
that
the
going on
bullshit?
here.
The Stranger Things bit is the bullshit, you think?
The fact that they want to have a lot more creative control. I don't think necessarily that that's the case for reasons that I'll go into. Or I don't necessarily think that they would be entitled to an awful lot of creative control, again, for reasons that I'll go into. Which is not to say that they might not say, oh, can you age it up slightly? But I still think it's at the BBC to decide what the programme is. But we'll come back to that.
Just for clarity, that we're, because it's not been said yet, that the streaming service that we think it's going to be.
We're coming back to that.
Oh, right. Okay. But it's one begins with N and ends in Netflix.
No, it's not.
No?
I don't think so.
Oh, no. Netflix.
Is it Mubi?
The ones that probably delivering your next cricket and manual probably is what's going to be. Although maybe you wouldn't be going that way, Steve.
Prime candidates.
Anybody listening to this will already know because it's all over the artwork for the podcast. No, Steve, it says, the rumour says, new partner is said to be on a similar scale to Disney, whereas Netflix have been in the industry since before the industry began and are not twice as big, but nearly twice as big as Disney or Amazon. So Netflix are the one who aren't on a similar scale to Disney.
Fair enough.
Whereas, as Schapansky was talking about on the last Radio Free Scaro,
which I heard yesterday morning, so I'm obviously missed that bit.
Well, they were talking about Netflix, and then all of a sudden the conversation got onto
Yeah.
Amazon Prime, and as soon as they got onto Amazon Prime, it all started stacking up, didn't it, really? That's what I sort of took away from the conversation. Anyway, the rumour goes on, the leak, the whatever you want to call it, goes on. However, Russell T Davies is said to strongly believe that the show's fun, campy, very family-friendly tone, the approach taken during the 2005 revival and 2024 Season 1, is the key to its success. Maybe not for reasons that we've probably just gone into, frankly. The potential partner is reportedly already offering a mix of fresh and seasoned creatives, some with some really great credits, many of whom they've worked with before and are enthusiastic about the potential deal and eager to get involved in the show in any way they can, which just turns into word soup and has absolutely nothing to do with how television is made, frankly, at that point. Whilst ensuring that the show retains its British identity and core values, however, RTD remains extremely cautious and apprehensive, as he is known, particularly when it comes to Doctor Who, for being highly selective and protective about who he collaborates with and allows to write for the show, which is a good and bad thing, I suppose. I don't think RTD's going to be there. And I think he pretty much confirms that in the latest issue of DWM, frankly. We'll come back to that. There's one more paragraph. At this stage, both the BBC and Bad Wolf are reportedly backing RTD's vision, who is looking to stay on for at least 3 more seasons, but they're also aware of the financial challenges of continuing the show without a major partner. That said, there's apparently a contingency plan in place which could involve a shortened season or an annual special or specials if necessary, and RTD is said to be thankfully very dedicated to finding a way to make sure the show survives and continues. I think in that paragraph there, you could probably substitute substitute Bad Wolf for RTD. Forget about RTD. And again, that stuff about the contingency plan. I don't think there's a contingency plan. I think there's all sorts of things they could do, but I don't think any of them amount to a plan because they want to know what.
That last paragraph sounds like a regurgitation of a previous statement made. But didn't Moffat talk about if Disney backs out, then it can be done and blah blah blah. So it sounds like a sort of a.
Russell himself said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
And so
I didn't read the DWM piece as him saying I'm off. It seemed to me quite specifically that what he was saying is there's no news for now. So until there is news, there's not really much point in me hanging around here writing a column each month.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
If you'll allow me, I've got it in front of me right now. It says, but we don't know what's happening. This is the last paragraph. But we don't know what's happening yet. And while everyone works that out, I'll take a pause on this page, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully we'll have the news soon, and certainly the war between the land and the sea is about to break out, so there are great things ahead. Until then, and his last line is, it has been an absolute joy, which, of course, is the last line that Shooty got, was Doctor says before he regenerates into Billie Piper.
Yes, we'll come back to Billie Piper, no doubt. Okay, there are several sort of strands to this. Shall we start with RTD, whether we think he's going to be there? Because maybe the question of whether RTD is going to be there leads us into, so what happens next? So whether RTD is there or not is essentially up to Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter, isn't it? And I suspect that Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter are so protective of Bad Wolf, the company that they founded, not with him. Remember, they may have founded it and given it a name that's associated with him, but it was several years after they founded it before he began working with them on that. They've had some massive successes. Doctor Who, for all that actually it's been pretty successful, has sort of widely been regarded on social media, and not just therefore on social media, but that stuff rolls upwards to the people who make programs. It's regarded as something that hasn't been as successful as it ought to have been, even if you don't think it's necessarily a failure. I think there's every chance they'll lay the blame for that firmly at his door, because after all, it was Russell T Davies's, mission to make Doctor Who as popular again now as it was back when Tennant and Tate were there the first time. He got that for 3 or 4 episodes, because the first Christmas special did well. It was on immediately after the Tennant specials, pretty much. And then the viewing figures halved, and even less than halved, overnight. And I don't think that Gardner and Tranter will stand for that. And I think they'll be the ones who want to bring in a fresh broom to take over Doctor Who. And whether they're friends or not, when it comes to protecting your business, I think it'll be Gardner and Tranter who asked Russell T Davies to walk away, or even, given what he's written in DWM, yes, Steve, you bet right, maybe to step upstairs to become an executive producer. But given what he's written, this thing about it has been an absolute joy, I think that's him signalling, I'm done with Doctor Who now. Somebody else is coming in the door.
Thing is, Tranter and Gardner have a duty to Sony, I think, who own Bad Wolf. So they would own that.
Sony kicked in money. I don't know if they own it outright, but they certainly kicked in, like, what, 50 million or something like that before the Doctor Who deal.
Yeah. And the other thing is, who would replace him? That's your key point. Is if they've got someone in there who they think can do a job and replace him, then yes, he's vulnerable. But who's going to move to Cardiff and do that for however many months, take on all the stress? Is it? I think it's more.
Well, Davis never
have a look at that showrunner model.
The showrunner doesn't live in Cardiff, do they? None of them have lived in Cardiff.
He lives an hour's train ride from Cardiff.
Moffat didn't.
Just
Chibnall
up the road.
Didn't.
Yeah,
Moffat and Chibnall didn't, John. The showrunner doesn't need to be there.
They never even really moved there. Yeah.
Sorry, John?
Davis has got a flat there. He has got a flat in there.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, they all go down to the set, but none of them lives there.
Presumably, if the rumour's true, or partly true, and Amazon will insist, it doesn't feel like they'll get creative control, but they could insist on a sort of tonal shift. And if they do go for the same kind of level as Stranger Things, not trying to emulate Stranger Things, but going for that kind of early to mid-teen sort of horror
Yeah.
demographic,
Mhm.
then the showrunner's choice is much broader. I think you could go with anyone, and they would make it. In fact, you would want to go with somebody not previously connected with Doctor Who, just to make something fresh out of the
Very
bones
hopefully.
of this series.
Or
That
even,
sounds quite exciting to me. I mean,
Me too.
I liked the sort of childish, campy sort of Russell T Davies stuff, but I think Doctor Who works when it does the James Bond thing of cycling between sincerity and serious Daniel Craig, and then maybe not quite as far as, as Bond
Die
goes,
Another Day.
but slightly lighter.
But yes, absolutely. And after all, it's not as if a lot of the fans watching this, who've been watching this saga for the last 50 years, don't still think of the Robert Holmes, Philip Hinchcliffe era as the absolute peak of Doctor Who. And that's much closer to Stranger Things than it is to Russell T Davies, frankly. So, I mean, I'm not saying I necessarily think that will be the case, but I should imagine that if you consider that the last 2 years has been something of a failure, you're not just going to carry on in the same vein, are you? You're going to try and mix it up a bit, try and find something that will be more successful, even if that means fewer viewers, but more engagement. Because sometimes the greater engagement is what brings the sort of money and the longevity
Yeah.
rolling in.
I find talking to some of the people I know at work who are more casual viewers, they were so excited about David Tennant coming back, and they were really, desperate to watch that as soon as it came on the TV. And then once that series of stories had gone, it very soon became something that they weren't that bothered about anymore.
It's weird how the bi-generation thing brings Ncuti Gatwa in for the last 5 minutes of that episode, presumably with the intention of giving you just enough of him that you want to come back and see more of him. But what happens instead is you've shown just enough of him that people are going, yeah, I've seen him now, I'm not bothered. And so probably there was some of that. On the Amazon, so Russell T Davies, any more thoughts about whether anybody think Russell T Davies will be there?
I have a feeling he will, actually. As possibly as an executive producer, but
I don't see RTD as being anything other than hands-on when it comes to a show. He just feels like Captain Kirk in the Enterprise at the beginning of Star Trek Generations there when an accident happens and he's just chomping at the bit. Just someone ask me and I'll spring into action here and save this ship from Cameron Fry from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I don't think he doesn't play well with others. Let's face it. It's his show. It is his show. And I don't think he would just, rubber stamp stuff and be off. I don't think he'd be able to do that.
I could have seen him
a bit like bringing George Lucas in as an executive producer on all of these new Star Wars things. There's just no way.
He'd be hovering, he'd be hovering over, and people would be compelled to what does George think? What does George think on this?
The one thing I could have seen is Russell T Davies moving upstairs to an executive producership, becoming part of the trio of, let's call them Radio Free Scaro, in charge of Radio Free Cardiff, I meant to say, in charge of Doctor Who, right? As long as he gets to choose who the new showrunner is.
No.
In a sort of, if it had been his choice.
He's a writer. He's a writer. He is a writer first and foremost, and I think that he needs to go and write things, which he already is. He's doing for Channel 4 next year. So,
but the thing is, definitely, if they ask him to step away, he's not going to say, "Yeah, I'll take the executive producership." That is something that's not going to happen, is it?
No.
I think that depends how it's done. I mean, you've said that Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter are close pals of his. I mean, they are mates. So they presumably know how to talk to him and how to persuade him to do things. I mean, describing there how what RTD wouldn't do, it puts me in mind of it. That's exactly how Barry Letts wasn't when he was executive producer over John Nathan Turner in his first year. Barry was so self-effacing about getting involved at all. And after a year, he says, well, look, I might as well not be here. Get on with it.
We'd love to have a Barry Letts in this day and age again.
Is it possible
in that respect?
They could lie to Russell T Davies and say, yes, you'll be writing Doctor Who. And in the end, actually, he's writing the CBeebies one.
Oh, tell him he is in charge still. Tell him he still is in charge.
Yeah.
Much
I just don't use his script.
Off to his own pocket dimension.
Yeah, just show him his episodes. AI produced, and then
Yeah, exactly. Just in his own little bubble world or something.
Oh, Don
Yeah,
Bubble. Yes.
we've got Ian Levine to make them for you, Russell.
yeah,
Right. I'm going to come on to the Amazon thing in a minute because I think there are some sort of corroborating factors that we can talk about there. But before we do, since we've been talking about Russell T Davies, the very last thing he has done thus far, in terms of what we've seen on screen, is throw Billie Piper in front of the cameras and say this is the new, well, not say this is the new Doctor Who, but have the Doctor regenerating into her in such a way that she'll be the, or in the ordinary run of things, she would be the lead in the next episode. However, the sort of fiction tries to make out that she's the Doctor or not the Doctor or something else or whatever. But Billie Piper is in the driving seat as far as the on-screen version is concerned as things stand. Now, if Russell T Davies is out, does that mean Billie Piper is out?
Oh God, yes, better be.
Did you see that? Did you see that Peter Davison's commented about it today?
Oh, do you really listen to Peter Davison?
No,
the man
no,
who
no,
said
no,
the
no,
Doctor
no.
should never be a woman. What does
Well,
he
I
know?
know, but he went back on that. He went back on that. Now, what he said today amounted to, I just don't understand it. She's a busy actor with a good career. Why would she do this?
As if it's not one of the biggest things you can do on telly, right? I'm with Matt. I think she does one episode as a bridge. But I think they have to play that very differently this time.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you the reasons in a minute. But
I have an idea too, but
okay, I'll tell you. But very briefly, my idea is Russell T Davies might have brought her on board, but as long as Bad Wolf are still involved, I think Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter, given their relationship with Billie Piper, she sticks around and does them a favour, does the one episode to bridge into the next Doctor, and then we carry on afterwards with a different tone. I think you have to do something very different with that special than you did with Tennant and Tate. But the Tennant and Tate thing was deliberately very backward looking, trying to recreate 2008. Whereas having Billie Piper as the Doctor, or whatever you want to call it, is a very different kettle of fish altogether. I think you could make a really interesting 60 minutes where you can have action and adventure and fun and jokes, but also have it be this character in search of their own identity. And at the end of the episode, they sort of, their identity becomes clear and then they regenerate into the next ongoing Doctor. So I think you could do something really interesting with it. Depends how you play it. But if Russell T Davies is not involved, if he was involved, it would be a load of the usual. But get somebody else to do it. You could tell a really interesting, engaging story with Billie Piper and then move on. And then people either can start with the Billie Piper special. Here's this interesting character, and here's how this interesting character sees himself, and here's our brand new version of that interesting character.
I don't even think we're going to get that much off her. I think what we've seen so far is mid-regeneration, and that when it does come back, whenever,
well, it potentially
first
could
thing
be.
we'll
Yeah,
see, is the regeneration continuing into the new Doctor?
I think her first line in any new episode should be to look at her hands and say, "Oh God, I'm still regenerating," which sets up the fact that she'll change at the end of the episode.
I think it's easy to underestimate how much of a draw she would be for one episode, say, and how much of a gift that is. Russell T Davies obviously doesn't have a plan necessarily, but he's seeded this, so to speak. He's seeded this person into the end of his version of Doctor Who, and has given a kind of gift to the next person picking it up because they've got Billie Piper's name,
right?
that will attract viewers, and a cliffhanger that will attract viewers potentially.
Right, Iain, then Schapansky.
Yeah,
because Ian's good.
I had so it comes back to this question of they want more creative control than Disney Plus, and we know Disney Plus essentially had none whatsoever. Is a new streamer, be it Amazon, be it Apple, whoever, are they going to want to start with one episode of Billie Piper and then a new
I'm
series?
coming to this, Iain.
It's not good. It's the same mistake they just made last time, and I think anyone who's paying money for the property at this point is going to be avoiding every single mistake that was made in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I sort of agree, except I think it depends on how you do it. I think how they did it was the mistake they made last time. I think if you do it right, you can do it in a really interesting way. Is that where you were going, Schapansky?
No, I joked about this on RFS, and I'm starting to come around with it actually being what might happen is Billie Piper stars in a 6-minute Children in Need special on Hands Off to the Next Doctors. They basically have 6 months to cast a new doctor. Or maybe not. Maybe that makes it open ended or something like that, and that's how you get out of it. Because you're right, Iain. Like who wants to pick up old baggage? You know.
Yeah.
They've done
That's
it
no
twice.
way to talk about Billy. How dare you?
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like previous
pop star, damn it.
you know, like I've come around on the '96 TV movie, but you know, stupid fans like us demanded that we see the regeneration, and so we wasted literally a third of the episode setting up how Doctor Who works. You know,
but the rest of that movie.
You know, but Russell T Davies, though, of course, 2005 does what he should have done this time around and just clean break. And the ongoing mystery is a mystery for everyone. The Time War, new fans and old fans had no idea we were both in it together. It was great, and all of a sudden it's David Tennant having to explain the backstory to brand new viewers on Disney Plus. I mean, they got off the wrong start from literally the first shot of the first episode. So yeah, I can't see a new streamer saying I don't want anything to do with that. If we like the show enough, maybe we'll pick up the back catalog, but we're not even interested in that. We're interested in making a new show, you know.
And now after Stephen's called her baggage, I think we should lay into Alanis Morissette for the rest of the podcast.
You leave Alanis alone.
Leonard Cohen?
Just don't go to Joni Mitchell. Don't go anywhere near Joni Mitchell.
I mean, Matt's a big fan of Joni Mitchell, right? So that's unlikely to happen. I think, yes, it depends what happens. It depends whether the new streamer takes over production or not. Because if Bad Wolf carry on production, I think Gardner and Tranter want to do the Billie Piper thing before they move on. And it may be that it's financed in such a way that you can do Billie Piper separately from the new production and start the new deal with the episode afterwards. So, I mean, there are variables out there. If there's no Bad Wolf, I think there's no Billie Piper. If there's a Bad Wolf, I think she's very much still on the table.
I think the one thing you've got to say is that Billie Piper got the conversation going around. It was the most talked about thing of last season.
That image on the front of the magazine is actually quite a strong image of her face having just regenerated.
Well, yeah, as the Dead Ringer sketch from last week said, now I'm off to regenerate for clicks, and that's exactly what it was. You know, at the sake of any drama or integrity, you did cheat the audience. Yeah.
Well, you'd only be cheating the audience if you didn't go on to do an episode with Billie Piper.
Well, it's silly, though. That's the thing. And now we're having to explain, okay, so this person now looks like the first companion 25 years ago, and now, you know, and all of a sudden you are just lumbered with backstory.
I don't know.
Only as much as Capaldi was.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily are unless you choose to do that. I think you can choose to move away from that and just see, I spoke about this on something we did a couple of weeks ago. I think you could just start the episode with her confusing her name and telling one person she's Rose and another person she's the Doctor. And the story is, well, is she Rose or is she the Doctor? And the important thing is not who Rose is or who the Doctor is, but that she doesn't know, and that by the end of the episode she finds out. As an audience member, you don't need to know either thing, but you can follow the story of this conflicted person.
I don't know. It feels. I mean, when Disney, Disney Who started, or when it was coming up, there were people I know in my world here in Canada that had never watched Doctor Who before. And I thought going in, perfect. Disney Plus, available everywhere. Everyone has it. You can just jump in, because surely they're not going to just start a new series of a new season of a long-running series relying on all this back info. And like several episodes in, I was going, no, don't watch it. Like I couldn't recommend Disney Doctor Who because it was so backwards looking that it wasn't made for new viewers. You know, I mean, I've said this before. Disney was in on Doctor Who because BBC Studios have the rights to Bluey, and Disney really wanted Bluey, and that is how this whole deal came together, based on the info that I got. And you look at the timelines when the Bluey announcement was happening. They basically, okay, we'll pony up however much money for Doctor Who, give you a couple script notes and stuff like that, but basically we're here for Bluey, and you can take your 26 episodes of Doctor Who and go. You know, otherwise they probably would have exerted a little more creative control over that, because I just don't think they were interested. I don't think whoever comes after Disney will be just here, take our money and do what you need to do.
On the other hand, who is the main character in Stranger Things? Millie Bobby
11.
Brown, right? And what's her character called?
I suppose
11.
11, that's right. And the whole point of that first series of that is there is a mystery of who she is and where she's come from. I think if they choose to do it that way, you dispense with the explanations and just make Rose Tyler the Millie Bobby Brown of Doctor Who.
Well, I would do it without Billie Piper. I would do it with some completely different. I've often thought, like, how could you reboot Doctor Who without rebooting it? You know, without rebooting it, you know, and basically but there's a danger of having the main character, the Doctor, be the last one in on the joke. You know, everyone, the viewing audience who know Doctor Who knows, what, come on, it's a Dalek, recognize that, it's a Dalek. Well, how about, you know, when the Doctor on screen has no memory of these things, you know, how do you recreate a mystery in a character without...
That's the problem.
You
can pretend you're restarting Doctor Who, but you still have viewers who know what a Dalek is, who know
it's tough.
I came up with a solution.
It would be irritating.
Yeah. I came up with a solution, and it was simple. You have the Doctor regenerating.
Paul Mars has repeated your solution on social media today. I saw.
Who did?
Paul Mars.
Paul Mars.
Oh yes, he did. Have the Doctor regenerate in the time vortex, and then the Doctor forgets who they are, and because it's in the time vortex, so does the rest of the universe, and you start the next episode, the next season, a couple of years later, whatever. You tell the Radio Times and the general public, this is a fresh start for Doctor Who. This is a new Doctor, a new continuity. And in DWM, you say, and that's because the universe has forgotten who the Doctor is. So it's the same continuity for fans, but it's a new continuity for viewers.
But again, that's kind of what they've already done with
Eccleston, but they insisted on saying that Eccleston was the 9th and that Smith was the 11th.
That doesn't really mean anything.
It's
the de facto reboot.
But the de facto reboot only works if you say, and Billie Piper or whoever else is the first Doctor, not the 16th Doctor. Because if you say it's the 16th Doctor, it doesn't matter what else you say.
Or you just say it's the Doctor.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
You don't even number them, you know? Yeah.
The issue is that they keep numbering them, and so nobody does believe it's
Except again, they don't really, do they? Eccleston in Rose, if I'm wrong, John Arnold will correct me because he wrote the Black Archive on it. He doesn't say out loud, I am...
I'm not talking about what happens on screen. Doctor. I'm talking about what happens in the promotion.
Well,
if you promote Eccleston as the 9th Doctor Who, everybody watching is going to say, and it was okay because there was a 15-year gap. But if you don't have the gap, you have to stop calling them by the numbers.
And from memory, again, in the promotion, I seem to remember they just called him the new Doctor.
I know, but I'm talking about other than after a 15-year gap. If you have a 2-year gap now, you can't come back and say Billie Piper or whoever is the 16th Doctor. And that's what they did do with Jodie Whittaker. They did say she's the 13th Doctor and that Tennant was the 14th Doctor and that Gatwa was the 15th Doctor. They never do restart. You have to restart in your promotion because it's not what happens on screen that appeals to a new audience. It's how you get the new audience to the screen in the first place.
A very minor thing, whether to call them new Doctor or number them in the promotion. Fans will number them whatever.
Well, who cares? Yes, but that's not important, is it?
But I don't think the promotion's important. What happens on screen is important. And
how do people come to see what's on screen if it's not for the promotion?
They look at adverts on television, trailers, Again, the Eccleston
that's-
trailers didn't feature him running from a burning TARDIS.
I'm not talking
saying,
about Eccleston
"I'm the
after
Ninth
15
Doctor."
years, Matt. I'm talking about
Yeah.
Jodie Whittaker after 2
Well,
years.
Jodie Whittaker in the trailer didn't come down a hill from the TARDIS and go, "I am the whatever number." In fact, they're frequently not numbered anymore because even I get confused with the numbering and lose track. I have to start adding from McCoy onwards to work out where the hell I am.
It's all Moffat's fault.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
okay, the
let's-
time stocks in that, man. Or the Hurt, or Joe Martin.
Let's move on from that point then. Amazon Prime. So I looked something up before we started, and I discovered something that I thought was curious, and so I'm going to repeat this. I don't know if you saw it, Stephen, or Mr. Schapansky, Stephen, because I did send you this in WhatsApp just before we started talking. I went to see what the copyright notices are on about a handful of different programs, because the copyright notice is the company that owns the program, right?
Right.
If you take out a copyright on something, you are the owner of that. So Spidey and His Amazing Friends, which is the nearest correlation we have with, say, for example, the animated Doctor Who series, that's copyrighted to Marvel Animation. So it's not the BBC, despite it being on iPlayer, and it's not Disney, despite it being on Disney Plus. It's copyrighted to Marvel Animation. I went back in history and I found Spooks, and Spooks is copyrighted not to the BBC but to Kudos Film and Television Production. His Dark Materials, made by Bad Wolf, is copyrighted to Bad Wolf, and Bluey, made by the BBC and an Australian production company, and also is part of the Disney brand, is copyrighted to Ludo Studios. Doctor Who, Disney Doctor Who, from start to finish, the Tennant and Ncuti Gatwa era, is copyrighted to the BBC and the BBC alone. Disney don't own any of Doctor Who.
No.
The BBC did not sell Doctor Who to Disney. They sold Disney the rights to screen Doctor Who.
Correct.
And
BBC Studios. BBC Studios.
Yeah, BBC Studios.
Specifically, yeah.
And this is where this differs from what's happened with Bond. So lots of people have been making comparisons with Bond. The Bond comparisons are a fallacy because the BBC is not selling Doctor Who to Amazon or whoever. We think it's Amazon, we're pretty sure.
It's a partnership.
Yeah, it's not even a production partnership. It's you have the rights to stream this globally. We own it, and we are the publishers of it in the UK. And that is a very different situation. Amazon are coming in as distributors. Now, like Disney, they might be distributors with a little bit more say in what goes on. And potentially, given that Doctor Who is being made independently of BBC Studios by Bad Wolf, it could be that the BBC sever their ties with Bad Wolf and Amazon become the independent production company who makes Doctor Who for the BBC, which the BBC technically then sell back to Amazon, because Amazon won't own the IP, the BBC will, and Amazon will only be making it on their behalf.
This sounds very much like Chelsea selling themselves their own hotel.
Basically,
Or their women's football
yeah.
team as well.
Yeah.
I don't think the BBC would sell it outright too, because I think they have a pretty good reliable partner in Bad Wolf, and the studio set up, and it's in the UK, and it's, you know, with people that they trust, and who are only interested in making the show, not like, you know, Jane Tranter and Julie Gardner aren't writing it. I don't think the BBC or BBC Studios would sell it outright. I think I'd be curious to see who actually makes Amazon shows. You know, do they have an Amazon studio that makes the Rings of Power series?
Amazon, unless I'm very much mistaken, Amazon Studios,
because it used to be in New Zealand, but now it's in the UK now because it's cheaper to make, and you know.
I believe Amazon Studios are a production company who make things like The Man in the High Castle, for example. That's finished now, but I think they basically started with that. So they do make some of their own stuff, but they also buy stuff in. So Amazon,
Yeah.
And of course, to Amazon, if you're just buying Doctor Who in and paying 50% of its production cost, that's not the same as producing Bond movies. You're talking about, for 2 seasons of Doctor Who, cost less than what you pay for one Bond movie. So
Yeah.
for them, the distribution of Doctor Who around the globe is something that comes relatively cheaply, as it did for Disney. And here's where I think it differs with what happened at Disney. At Disney, who were at the time making 2 or 3 Marvel series a year and 2 or 3 Star Wars series a year, Doctor Who is something that's nice to have on that platform, but that doesn't bring in any subscribers because those subscribers are already there for Star Wars and for Marvel. And actually, now that Disney are pulling back on the production of Star Wars and Marvel, maybe they need Doctor Who because so those subscribers can walk away now for 9, 10 months of the year. Whereas if they had Doctor Who, maybe that wouldn't happen. But too late for that. I think the really interesting thing about Amazon is that they are buying into IPs from around the globe, Bond, Neighbours, even, for example, to try. But Neighbours brings in a healthy number of subscribers because it's on all year round.
Cancel it again.
Yeah,
They've cancelled it again.
Oh, have they? But do you know what I mean? That's the model to have. But Bond, although it's another British IP like Doctor Who, ain't necessarily aimed at the same people as Doctor Who. Amazon don't really have anything on their platform, especially now, I suppose, if the Lord of the Rings thing has come to a finish.
They're making season 3 right now.
Yeah.
They have canceled the Wheel of Time. That was
the Wheel of Time. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Figured such. Yeah.
Who's making? It's Warner's who are making the Harry Potter, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's not going to go on Amazon, presumably. That's not where that's headed. I think Doctor Who,
HBO. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Doctor Who would be a great buy for Amazon because it brings in subscribers. And here's where it gets more interesting. All this stuff that turned up on Reddit about what Amazon do or do not want Doctor Who to be, that's not what we heard. We heard that what happened is Amazon want to buy Doctor Who and they want the back catalogue. And I remember, and so they're more interested in the back catalogue than they are in having control over the new show. We didn't hear anything about them wanting control over the new show at all. That's only what's been on Reddit. It's not what we heard. The interesting thing for me is, so then I'm like, oh yeah, because I've heard that the back catalogue, the international rights to that, comes up later this year. So I looked into it, and the AI on Google was only able to tell me July 2025, which is not true. But so I looked a bit further, and nowhere could I find a date where the international rights become available. But I could find when they had last been sold. And the really interesting thing is January the 1st, 2021. Oh, it may have been 2020 or 2021, which presumably means those rights become available on January the 1st of next year. That's in America. That's what's happening in North America, which is probably the primary market. A secondary market would be Australia, where, as it happens, the rights to series 1 through 15 of Doctor Who, or series 1 through 13, currently reside nowhere. Australia can't currently legally watch Doctor Who for free. They either have to buy it through streaming services like Amazon or Apple TV, or else they have to stream it through something like the Wayback Machine and watch it, I don't know, technically legally, but slightly illegally. Currently, there is no streaming partner for Doctor Who in Australia, as far as I could make out, and I looked into this. If what we think is going to happen, given what Russell T Davies said about the war between the land and the sea coming forwards into this year. I mean, he hinted at it coming forwards. He didn't say it was going to be next year and now it's going to be this year. But if you read on from the hint that it's coming forwards, what it looks like is it was going to be next year in the Doctor Who slot, so that next year didn't become a Doctor Who free zone, but you had the spin-off instead. But now it looks like they want it to be on in the autumn this year, and Mr. Schapansky's got more on that, which I'll come to in a second.
I suppose I do.
If they can get the war between the land and the sea to finish broadcasting before the end of December, then the Disney deal concludes, insofar as the international rights are concerned, before the America deal with HBO Max for the past seasons of Doctor Who, and somebody can sign on the dotted line to take Doctor Who on from January the 1st of next year, and they get the past of Doctor Who as well as the future of Doctor Who. I think The War Between the Land and the Sea will broadcast between November and December. I think Amazon will sign on the dotted line as soon as the last episode's gone out for a deal that starts on the 1st of January that gets announced as a Christmas present to the fans on December the 25th. I don't know. That, to me, all adds up. Mr. Schapansky, what did you...
Well, you're right about War Between. They even mentioned in the Doctor Who magazine that it's coming out later this year. It'll be... initially, that's what I thought. They'll bridge it. They'll have it in the springtime slot next year, but that's not going to be the case. There was some internal Disney marketing email that came out a few months ago that I looked askance at, but I saved the screen grab of it, of all the shows that were coming from Disney Plus in the calendar year, just to see how accurate it was. And as I look at it, I mean, all the little, from Stugo to Goosebumps, Spider-Man, Doctor Who's in there, Andor's in there. That came out just after Doctor Who. Ironheart, Eyes of Wakanda coming out. Vision, Star Wars Visions. Marvel Zombies is coming out in October. War Between the Land and the Sea is nestled between Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Season 2, I think it is. And then Marvel Wonder Man. Both of those shows are slated to come out in December. Which means War Between the Land and the Sea. Also, I've heard that they're probably going to start promoting that on the BBC side in November and December. I think War Between the Land and the Sea not only comes out in December, but it's also probably going to come out all at once on iPlayer and on Disney Plus. I think it'll all drop at once. There won't be a weekly thing. It'll be a 5-episode drop at once. Possibly just, to get... Here's the thing. I would be terrified of the ratings for a non-Doctor Who spinoff on BBC One. And I bet you they probably are too. And so I think they're just going to drop it all at once and be done with it. And you're right, JR. I think they're going to just wash their hands of it and say, we're done. The contract concluded. Hopefully, if your theory of Amazon picking up all 15 seasons and assorted specials of modern Doctor Who is correct, because right now Disney has, they don't even release physical media until a year after the broadcast date. June 24th in this country, we're finally getting the Blu-ray for season 1 of Gatwa's time, which is 1 day, 1 year and 1 day since it came out. Whereas you've already got the Steelbook coming for season 2 in August. So I'm hoping that they'll just sort of say, because they've done it before with their own shows. They produced that Willow TV show and then pulled it after it bombed, so they wouldn't have to pay any more rights for it. So I feel like, if once they're done with Doctor Who, I feel like it'll be gone from Disney Plus too.
Well, this is it. Yeah, it may be that the Ncuti Gatwa seasons sit on Disney Plus for the next 12 months after their contract, is gone, but
or did they get rid of it for tax reasons?
But the BBC own it, and if the Disney get rid of it for tax reasons, the BBC are free to sell it on. And even if they don't, and it sits on Disney for a year, at the end of that year, it then gets folded into whatever's on Amazon Prime. So I mean, Amazon may have those at the start, they may not, but certainly you would imagine that those seasons would join the others on Amazon Prime at some point in the not too distant future. And it's not like television programs don't do that all the time, as it is. Doctor Who's already been on Netflix, Amazon, HBO Max. It's been all over the place in North America already. It would just be the same thing again, right?
Well, yeah, listen, Midsummer Murders, the first 21 seasons are on everyone. Now I'm having to search for that seasons 22 through 24 on other places other than Amazon Prime, For what it's worth, Amazon Prime in Canada has the first, has Eccleston all the way through Capaldi on Prime here in Canada. They don't have the Whittaker era yet. I think those rights are still owned by Bell Media, which own Crave, and they don't even have it on Crave. They have the rights to it and don't even bother with it. So I think they're just waiting for those to expire and hopefully,
You're saying you've got the Nettles era, but the Dudgeon era hasn't been released yet.
Oh no, Dudgeon era is there. But we're into like 2021. We've had to go to like Pluto TV or we're watching it on Tubi. My wife and I watch it on Tubi, mostly to for murder plots, but also, let's face it, to spot Doctor Who actors. That's why I'm there.
I swear to God, if ever a series could be written by AI at this point, Midsummer Murders is
I always thought it was
material. Yeah.
But I think Nettles does 15, so dudgeons in from about the 16th series, I think, or
Oh, well,
thereabouts.
it's like 12. It's about a halfway
Is
point.
it really?
I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Or
Yeah,
as
it's a
he's
lot.
mentioned in promotion, the new Barnaby.
Yeah, you know, they didn't even have a regeneration
the
scene. I was
13th
shocked.
Barnaby.
30,
I was
yeah.
shocked. They barely even mentioned that there's a new guy in. It was just swept him under the rug. It's amazing.
Terrible.
Have they had the War Barnaby yet?
Anton
It's a
Lesser.
stage play
That'll be
version.
Anton Lesser.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're about done, really. I think we've been through everything, really. I don't know. Any of you me and Stephen talked a lot during that sort of last bit about the Amazon Prime thing. I mean, my bullshit detector does it ring true? Does it sound like it's true? And if so, then you dig into things that corroborate. And if those things corroborate it, I think that kind of helps you lean in towards whether it's true. And to me, this all has the ring of truth about it. And at this point, we're still 6 months away, basically, from when any of this might be announced or finalized. So everything that we've been saying about who might be producing it, what choices they might make, these are things still to be determined. So any of these things could change in the meantime, but the basic fact of who the next streaming partner might be, why it might be that streaming partner, and the sort of initial changes behind the scenes, I think all of those have the ring of truth. And this leak, if you take the confirmation bias out of it, basically corroborates it. What Russell T Davies said in DWM basically corroborates it. And if you just look into the facts of, where the copyrights lie and all this kind of stuff, when the international rights come up, that all feeds into the same idea for me. So I don't know. Any of you guys got any more thoughts on that?
I mean, just to jump in again, sorry for monopolizing the conversation, but
that's why you're here. You're the guest.
I know that, but there's the timing of the cancellation of the Wheel of Time was curious. And now that we're sort of leaning into Amazon being the new producer of Doctor Who, we've canonized it now. Just because, is that because it wasn't performing for Amazon, then let's cut it loose, or is like they only announced like a couple 3 weeks ago? Or did they say, well, we have a chance to make Doctor Who. It might draw in the same kind of viewership that we're getting for Wheel in Time, but for a lot less money because we're producing Wheel of Time at great expense in Eastern Europe somewhere. We could just pay Bad Wolf to make Doctor Who and reap in the profits for that. So let's cancel that and put that money towards Doctor Who. Pure speculation on my part.
And then you've got left over for Bond, right?
Right. One last bit of speculation. Someone who signed on a creative deal, 2019, I think it was, and has barely produced anything, and then re-upped their deal. Now that a new show called a new Tomb Raider show is finally coming, wouldn't it be something if someone who's under contract with a first look deal from Amazon Prime, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, as the new showrunner of Doctor Who, put that in your back pocket? Wouldn't that be something?
Nice. So there's our two predictions: Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and the whole thing's announced on December 25th.
There you go. Happy
All
Christmas.
right.
Along with the new James Bond. It's like, or Amazon Prime Day. That's what we'll get it. Amazon Prime Day is happening July 8th to 11th, and we'll get everything that day. All the branding will have to do with Billie Piper regenerating into, I don't know, Richard Madden or something like that. Yeah.
Billie Piper's face in the James Bond tunnel.
Yeah, exactly.
If I hadn't already done the artwork for this episode, I'd be
and they'll have the Prime subscription deals will be on that day as well.
Yeah,
Bezos will take it to the edge of space in his phallic rocket as well.
Well, unless it blows up. There seems to be a habit of doing that just lately for private investor spaceships, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On which note, then, and it'll probably be in about like a week before we come back and do more news, because these monthly news roundups, we've had at least 6 of them in the last month. So they're not really they're not really fulfilling what they're supposed to be doing. Until we do that, I was JR. This should be fun.
I was Iain.
I was John.
I was Mark.
And I was Matt.
Hello, Steve.
I was Stephen.
And we will speak again soon.